Well, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm gonna be, well, not today, starting from next week, I'm gonna do a new series called Transits of Planets. And I'm gonna talk about what each planet during a transit does. What does it mean? And this is definitely, in a way, a little bit different from planets in signs and planets through house series. Like, sure, you know what sun might do in the first house or in the sign of Aries, but what does a sun do on a transit is a little bit different. So we're going to talk about that. But the first thing we want to talk about, what the hell is a transit? I mean, I know there are people who are 10 times more advanced than me who follow me. There are people who are probably at my level who follow me, and there are people who are absolute beginners who follow me in astrology, and they ask me questions. What are you talking about these transits in your videos when you talk about them? Well, I did the Jupiter and Saturn transit video just, I think, like last month, because Jupiter is now in Leo and Saturn's in Scorpio, and people are very oblivion to what transit is. What transit is this. It's the continuous movement of the planets. Your birth chart does not mean that planets stopped moving. Just imagine like 2 or 3 planets transiting right now, right over me, okay? And while they're transiting, within 5 seconds you're born. So as soon as your first breath is taken, we take a snapshot of it. But the planets keep moving. But we just took that snapshot of the moment. That becomes your birth chart. But transit will keep moving for eons. And the transit simply means the yearly movement of the planets. So sure, you have Saturn in the sign of Scorpio at your birth. And Saturn is in the 6th house when you were born. But in transit right now, Saturn might be in Aries. Saturn might be in Libra. Or Saturn is in Scorpio again. It's moving over your Saturn. So what these yearly movement does, they give us a clue as to what is happening in your life right now and what events can be triggered from the transit. That's what a transit does. But it's not so simple. People kind of do not study transit correctly sometimes. So like, as you know, in your horoscope, planets rule certain houses. If you're an Aries ascendant, Saturn will rule your 10th house and 11th house. This is like Astrology 101. And if you think you're at Astrology 98 or 99, this will help you. For Aries ascendant, Saturn rules the 10th and 11th house. So, and you have your Saturn in the 3rd house in Gemini. Fine. We can say something about that Saturn. We can say your job, or especially your business, will require you to travel a lot and deal with information and marketing and writing. Because Saturn in the 3rd house is this one position that will not let you be satisfied in work or a job. You're going to have to, Saturn will force you to do your own business. So fine, we know these things about your thing. But now it's 2015. We want to see what's happening. So what happens in Vedic astrology, we look at the Mahadasha and Antradasha, meaning the major period of planet that you're running through. Perhaps you're running through a 16-year period of Jupiter. And I know this may sound a little bit complex to you, right? But this is why you gotta actually study my books, Astrology, Conjunction, and at the Aspects of the Speed of Light, which you can actually find at this link here. I mean, I make astrology very simple in these books. You will learn the basics within one read of the book. Also, you can find your astrological report here too, to see what your ascendant is, to see which planet is transiting where in your horoscope. So when I do these series of planets on transit, you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, so for that, obviously, check out the links here. But for Aries ascendant, Saturn is transiting. You have your Aries ascendant, your Saturn is in the 3rd house as the 10th and 11th lord, fine. But right now, if a NASA scientist was to see where is Saturn, they will say Saturn is in Scorpio right now. The zodiac sign, in a way, are even used by scientists because it's a map. They're telling you the pointing of the position. Where exactly is Saturn? It's in Scorpio. So what would a person might think of this Saturn? Fine, Saturn in the 8th house brings transformation. Saturn in the 8th house can bring all sorts of unknown fear, unnecessary fear and panic. Saturn can do a lot of things here too. Saturn can give you sudden treasure. Saturn can suddenly transform your life into complete something else. Whatever 8th house represents. Okay? But are we studying this fully just by looking at the position of Saturn? No, we're not. We have to first also know what position does this particular Saturn holds in our horoscope. So if you are an Aries ascendant, remember the snapshot was taken. So bam, there's your planetary placements throughout your life. Those are your planets in your horoscope. So in your horoscope, Saturn is ruling the 10th house of career and work environment, and 11th house of recognition and achievements, hopes and wishes, gains, friends, and network circle. It's also the house of your father's sibling, your elder sibling. So when Saturn transits the sign of Scorpio, what it's doing, whatever it's going to give you the results, it's going to give you the results of these two houses. The major point of this transit for you is regarding your career and the 11th house that I explained. So there could be sudden change of jobs, or there could be sudden transformation in your workplace. The way your Saturn is, the way it's aspecting in your birth horoscope, wherever it's placed, shows sudden transformation regarding work and your elder sibling, your friends, your network circle. You know, this can show that suddenly your father's brother leaves to a foreign land suddenly, or suddenly he wins a lottery. Suddenly he gets a fever, he's sick. All of these things are seen through this transit. But then there's more that this Saturn is doing than just giving you results of these two houses. You also have to see what houses is this transiting Saturn aspects. So if Saturn is transiting the 8th house in your horoscope, it is influencing the 8th house. It aspects the 10th house with its 3rd aspect. It aspects the 2nd house with its 7th aspect. And it aspects the 5th house with its 10th aspect. So all these houses are being affected by this Saturn. But because Saturn is ruling your 10th house and your 11th house, we see that this 8th house transit of Saturn is actually will be doing good for you. Or it'll be neutral for you. Because why? Saturn is not ruling any bad houses in your horoscope. What are bad houses in the horoscope? 6th house, 8th house, 12th house, 3rd house. 3rd house is known as a mild malefic. It's really not a malefic. But Saturn rules the 10th and 11th. Now, here's another little bit advanced knowledge for all the beginners. 11th house for Aries ascendant becomes a Bhadakesh, meaning obstruction house. House that may cause argala, obstruction in your horoscope. But there are rules for that. You see how I'm slowly going deep. There are rules for that. If the Arg or Bhadakesh Lord is in the Upachya house, 3rd house, 6th house, 10th house, or 11th house. So you're born as an Aries ascendant. And if your 11th Lord is placed in the 3rd house, 6th house, 10th house, 11th house at your birth, that means it'll go better with time. So Bhadakesh effect will go less and less by your mid-30s. This is how transits should be studied. Then let's take a little bit more advanced to this transit. What nakshatra is Saturn sitting in? And before even that, where's the dispositor of Saturn? So Saturn is transiting the 8th house in the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by who? Ketu and Mars. Where are Ketu and Mars transiting right now? So you see, we're becoming a little bit more complex too again. But just to keep it simple, we study where the planet is transiting right now, what house. Now, if it's transiting the 6th house, 8th house, 12th house, is it going to give good results, meaning protection? Or is it going to frown upon you and give you misery? That depends upon what planet, what houses the planet is ruling. So for example, if you're a Libra ascendant, okay, Saturn is transiting the 8th house. That means it's in the sign of Taurus, transiting. But Saturn for Libra ascendant rules the 4th house and the 5th house. Two of the best houses known as Yoga Karaka planet. So Saturn becomes a Yoga Karaka for your ascendant. Rules the 4th house of home, happiness, real estate, mother, vehicles, anything that makes you happy. Then 5th house, speculative gains, education, children, creative self-expression. It's a house of political seats. So in your horoscope, if Saturn is today transiting the 8th house, it's going to bring the results of the 4th and 5th house through the 8th house. Now we want to see what sign is Saturn is placed in. Saturn is in the sign of Taurus, a friendly sign to Saturn. Saturn loves being in earth signs. Those are his friendly houses. So in 8th house, what can happen? Sudden move into a new property. If all the other transits are there, if all the other planet replacements are there. Saturn can show sudden gains in speculative business. You may suddenly have children. Like you never had children, now suddenly you're pregnant or your wife is pregnant. Saturn is giving good events in the 8th house because of the house rulership. And you also, again, like I said, I went into deep in my Jupiter transit. You want to see what nakshatra Saturn is going over. What padha is Saturn is in. So you see, you go deep, 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 deep. But now we want to know this main thing first. Remember this rule of thumb. If let's say you are seeing Saturn in the 8th house in Taurus, and I told you in this video that you should be getting a new house, and you don't get a house, does that mean that I am wrong or astrology is wrong? Astrology is never wrong. It's a person like me who is probably telling you that it might be, whatever I tell you might be wrong. So the first rule of this you want to understand is that the Mahadasha in Vedic astrology has to promise an event first. So if let's say, and if you don't know Mahadashas, again, watch my videos, read my books, and get the report where you get the link to see what is Mahadashas. You'll understand it in 5 minutes. It's not some complex word that should deter you from watching this video. Mahadashas are just simply time periods that everybody's going through. So you want to first see if Mahadashas promising a house. You're going through 16-year period of Jupiter in your life. And Jupiter is in the 4th house. Can Jupiter promise a house? Yes, it can. Then you want to narrow down that period of which sub-period of planet might give me a house. Well, that would be the SIP period of either the 4th house, 2nd house, 11th house, and even the 12th house. Why 12th house? Again, I'm going deep again. Because in 12th house, you're going to be dishing out a lot of expenses, a lot of money. What are you dishing out that expense and money for? Well, your Mahadasha is pointing to the 4th house. So it could be you were giving a huge down payment in your house. So Mahadasha needs to promise an event. Antradasha needs to promise an event. Then comes like Paryantradasha. Then comes transit. This is how you should study a transit. Don't just jump on transit. Say, well, I've got Saturn transiting my 4th house. I should be getting a house. Well, let's wait and see if KRS prediction comes true for me. Oh no, it didn't come true. He probably doesn't know astrology, or astrology is wrong. Probably right on the second one. So remember this rule, Mahadasha, the Vimshotri Mahadasha has to promise an event, Antradasha has to promise an event, Paryantra and transit comes into play. Even more than Paryantra, transit will totally help you get the time frame. This is why you use transit. Now, what will a transit do if it's not promising a house? And remember, in order to really understand if you will get those big things like a house, marriage, children, promotion, not just Saturn, but Jupiter has to be involved. Jupiter and Saturn double transit video that I've made, they have to point to a certain house for that event to really strongly fructify. But if, let's say, your Saturn is transiting the 8th house and it points to the 5th house. Remember the aspects, right? So from the 8th house, it's going to look at the 10th house, 2nd house, and the 5th house. And it does not give you a house. What can it do? Well, it can probably bring things within your home. Perhaps instead of you buying a house, you buy a new furniture. Instead of you having children, you get simply gains in your speculative wealth. Maybe your investments in stock market or your stocks goes up. Perhaps you gain access to some educational institution, but that too has to be Jupiter involved. But Saturn will simply do sudden good things in your life regarding these two houses. So this is a basic plot of transit. You got to know what your ascendant is. You got to know what major time period you're going through, Mahadasha, Antradasha, transit, its aspects, the houses it rules. And you also want to judge how is the transiting planet is. Is it debilitated transiting? Is it exalted when it transits? Is it neutral, friendly? What? You got to know these things. So for Libra ascendant person, Saturn transiting the 2nd house is good. But if Saturn were transiting the 7th house, it's in its debilitated position, especially at the 20th degree. That's when Saturn may not give you the good events. But because Saturn is ruling the 2 good houses in your horoscope, it'll try to protect the things in your life. So instead of really hurting you really bad when it's debilitated, it protects you. Or it will simply try to assist you to find a better route in that bad time period. But now we also want to understand that you look at transit not just from the ascendant, but from the moon. Remember, like the basic rule is in Vedic astrology, you study transit from the moon. But the reason why people mistake the fact that you need to study transits from the ascendant first. What is ascendant? Ascendant is you, nobody else. Moon chart is a secondary chart. It's equivalent to your birth chart, right? But the main chart is your ascendant. Things are happening from your ascendant. The physical things that you see are happening from your ascendant. What moon shows is, first of all, how are you going to react to this transit? From your mind, we assess how you're going to are you going to have a lot of fear regarding those things related to Saturn, the 4th and 5th house things? You look at transit to judge how you're going to feel from your mind. And you also see that, that quote unquote good and bad results. You also judge that from the moon. And also from the moon, your Saturn is going to be ruling some house. So let's say you're Libra ascendant. Saturn rules the 4th and 5th house in your horoscope. And I just showed you what to study for transits. But from the moon, let's say your moon is in Aries. Okay, so it's in the 7th house. So when you look at your moon chart in Vedic astrology, Saturn will be in the 2nd house transiting. So this shows that because your Saturn is in the 8th house, shows sudden events, good events, okay? And you are gonna be, because it's transiting 2nd from the moon, you're really gonna value and cherish these events. And you're gonna feel like you're gaining something in this event. Or you're gaining something in this time period. This is why, you read like Bhirat Parashara Hora Shastra or Jatak Bharanam, where they're saying that if Saturn transiting, 3rd and 6th and 7th and 10th and 11th from the moon, it'll give good results. All of these things. So because they know how Saturn is going to react from each house, from your mind, from your mind's perspective. From the ascendant, it's going to show what it's going to do. From your mind, it's going to show that from your mind, are you going to feel good about this event, or are you going to feel bad about this event? So both things are linked. But mainly, if you want to keep it simple and you as a beginner don't even want to dive into all these things, just stick with ascendant and all the things that I've showed you. And later on, you will understand yourself that moon chart is actually important. You need to look at the moon chart. Because an event can be promised from the ascendant and the moon chart. So what's happening now? There are multiple things that Saturn can give you in its transit from the ascendant and the moon. But now we go to a little bit more advanced level for transits. There's something called in Vedic astrology, Navamsha chart. Navamsha chart is a D9 chart that really narrows down the strength of your planets and how your planets are really behaving internally. Sure, you may have a badly placed moon in the birth chart, but the same moon, let's say moon is debilitated in the birth chart, the same moon might be exalted, meaning in the sign of Taurus in your Navamsha chart. So it's doing good. This is why Navamsha becomes a very strong chart. It shows about your marriage. It shows about your second part of your life. It shows about who you become as a person. And shows if your spouse is going to take you to your spiritual ashram. Because Navamsha is about partnership, your spouse. And what are they adding to your Navamsha? What are they adding to your life? Are they going to take you down into the gutter, or are they going to rise you to the throne of understanding your spiritual self? So transit in Navamsha is like that final say. What is this Saturn going to do? How is this Saturn going to behave? And what other things that are really going to be felt in your horoscope are seen through transit in Navamsha. Then, in Vedic astrology, there are divinal charts for everything, every aspect of your life. For wealth and family, for vehicles and home, for education, illnesses, marriage, longevity, your parents, your career, your gains. All of these are in divisional charts that are mathematically calculated depending upon the degree of your planet at the time of your birth. So if I want to see if you're going to have children, when are children possible? Not only do I look at your ascendant transits, when the transit of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars is going to promise children. I will also look at it in your children's chart, which is what? The Saptamsa chart, D7 chart. I'll also look at it from the moon. If it's not promising from your ascendant and if it's promising from the moon, it can take place. You can have children. And why do I speak it? I speak it from my own experience, from birth of my own children. And it's so funny though. From that, you can see In one chart you see children, in the other chart you see something else happening, and both things are happening from the ascendant and the moon. And one thing shows attainment of property, and the other says children. Both are happening. So study your chart from ascendant and the moon. But then also look at your Saptamsa chart, the D7 chart for children, the transit of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars especially, to see, are they pointing to children? Are they pointing to the 5th house, or the 5th lord, 9th house, and the 9th lord, or Jupiter? This will show you if children are possible. So these are, remember, I love what Juan Paul Manley said. We as astrologers are detectives, and we look for clues to add this, to create a murder scene, how exactly it happened. And I'm not, in astrology, it's not really murder scene, it's about happening of children, your promotion, your demotion, your wealth, your career, your travel. So we look for all these clues quickly. What's happening here? That's transit here. It's okay. It's a functional malefic. It's a functional benefic planet. This is happening. And you just got to sum up something within like 2-3 minutes tops. Maybe that's a little too much time. But yeah, you got to look at it and say, well, this is possible here. But even then, predictions can go wrong. Astrology is such a huge ocean that it will drive you crazy. You might end up in an asylum. If you try to perfect your astrology up to 80-90%, it can drive you insane because of the information you need to know. Because everything can be pointing to children, but then children do not come. Why? There is a yoga that denies you of your children. I will never discuss that, obviously, so don't worry about it. Planets can be causing argala, meaning obstruction, to having children at that particular transit, at that particular Mahadasha and Antradasha. You're going to have to wait another 6 years when the other Antradasha and Mahadasha comes in, and the Saturn, Jupiter, Mars transit promises you children. That's when it happens. Or perhaps your planets are not getting enough Rupas and Virupas. In the Ashtavarga, the transit of Saturn and Jupiter is very weak. You see how much stuff you got to know to really say, okay, this is happening or not happening. Then there's more things happen. I mean, there's so many more things. I mean, some of the stuff that I'm now reading that Sunil has sent me, I'm like, should I even read this? This can just drive me mad. Because the more I read this new stuff on Namansha, it's making me obsessed. Like, I don't want to leave my office. I want to study this Namansha thing. Because it's opening up this Pandora box for me. Maybe it's opening up my Jyotish Nadi. And I'm kind of scared. I'm like, man, these books are heavy. The stuff that they tell you, the information, there are literally like 5 different versions of Namansha. Just from the Namansha chart, you can create another Namansha. I mean, so I'm just gonna keep it simple here for transits. I know I went a long time here, but it's important for you guys to know how to study transits. Because even one of the most important things you have to know about transit is the real effect of transit is seen when a planet transits over another planet. When Saturn goes over your moon, Saturn goes over your birth Mars, Saturn goes over your birth Rahu, Saturn goes over your birth Venus, something. So knowing that what planet is transiting over what planet is where the game is really seen. Where do you really feel that effect? So that's what I'm going to be doing this series on. I'm going to be showing you what happens when Sun transits over every planet. Because Sun is transiting in one sign for 1 month. So what does it do when it transits over your Sun, your Moon, your Venus, your Mars, Rahu, Ketu, Uranus, Pluto, whatever? That's what I'm going to cover. That's what the real transit meaning comes into play. But now the principle of how to study that Sun. What house is that Sun ruling? Is it ruling the 5th house? Is it ruling the 6th house? Is it ruling the 10th house? Is it ruling the 12th house? Based on that effect of transit is going to take place from your ascendant. Then judge it from the moon. Sun is going over your Saturn, but from the ascendant, it's in the 4th house. From the moon, it's in the 7th house. 2 events can take place of the 4th and 7th house. Perhaps the 7th house things are good, 4th house things may not be good. You see, you got to create this matrix, this quick calculations within your mind of what's going to happen. So that's what the series is next week that I'll start from, of Sun going over Moon, Sun is going over Sun. Okay, and then we'll do each planet on this way. Okay, so I know, sorry guys, I took a lot of time off you, but this is something that you must know of studying transit, and there's a lot more to studying transit, which I'll slowly cover. I don't think there's one video did justice to tell you how much information is needed when to really pinpoint that event. Okay, so if you're new to my channel, subscribe below, and if you want to know what your ascendant is, what your planets are, what planet is transiting over what planet, so you can study this and all my books and consultations for that, check out the links here. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, because I'm gonna finish shooting that tonight. Bye-bye.